Welcome to the channel. Let's get right to it. 4-liter Dodge Caravan needs a timing belt. It's at time, about 60,000 miles, 120,000 clicks. This is also similar on the 3.5 liter that's probably in the Dodge Chargers, and I don't know what else had the 3.5 in them. Quite a few different vehicles, the Avengers. The 4-liter may also be in the Nitros and other things, just in a different orientation. Should be very similar. So we're doing the water pump and the timing belt, because if you do one, you should do the other, because they're kind of interconnected. It's not going to take you much longer. Let's get right to it. I'm using a couple not really specialized tools, but you'll see what they are. I'll tell you what they are. The biggest thing is I am using a special puller for the harmonic balancer. I'll have a link in the description for that. And I'm using a 20-volt electric impact gun. Otherwise, everything else is just standard. Let's get right to it and see if I can do it. Well, I guess I should just get to it and unhook the battery first, the negative cable, just so then I don't have any issues. That was a good idea. It's 10 millimeter, I believe, so just pulled her off. And that was done. Now I'm going to take this engine top cover off. It's just a cover, more for looks than anything. Just held on with 4 little, I don't know what you want to call them. They just stick on there. It's 4 of them. Pop on, pop off. So I was careful because I didn't want to break it. I don't want it to cost me any more than it has to. Now, got to take this screw off of here. It's a flat tip screwdriver. I guess there's a socket size too, but my size was flat screwdriver. And I just pried it off. It's a pretty snug fit. So was this hose. But I somehow managed to do it, so. Okay, the job's just going to get harder. Now behind her here, it's a MAP sensor, one of those kind of sensors. I just push this little red thing towards the rad, click, and then give her a little squeeze at the back here. It took a couple times there just because it seems stuck on, but it's just a clip, and I push it and it releases. So I'm just going to get this out of the way and then get out my filter box, get the filter out. I think I just pulled these towards the rad and then clipped and pulled the box towards myself, and a couple fingers at the back there that go in. Pulled the filter out. Now, of course, most of this is just kind of held in, just popped on, but I believe there is a bolt there in the corner. Not really sure what size. I should have wrote her down. No, that looks like a 10. Okay. 10 millimeter. Yeah, and, you know, how to use a 10 millimeter. That's what I did. Tried loosening her up. Get her out of there. Never had this out at all, so it's a learning experience for me. And of course, nothing wants to come out easy, including the socket. The only other thing that's really held on is by this power steering pump you see on the right hand side, that bolt there, or nut. I wasn't really sure how it was sitting in there, but it just clicks down. It's going to be fun putting it back in. Get repositioned here. There's that nut. 13 millimeter, just holds the power steering. Not the pump, but actually the reservoir for the pump on there. I'm just going to mark that bolt down somewhere so I remember what it is. And then just pull the reservoir just out of the way a little bit. It's pretty hard to move anywhere, but if I can get the air box out, that's really my biggest challenge here. It's the biggest thing in the way. I just popped up. So I was pretty happy about that. Got it out of the way fairly quickly. I wouldn't say it was easy. Now this is interesting. This little wiring harness. It's one of those plastic, I don't know what you want to call it. It's got the funny little fingers on it, and trying to get it off, and of course it's how old already, 11, 12 years old, and I end up breaking it. Thank you very much. Not a major tie strap. Yeah, that's what I'm using, a tie strap just to stick it back in there. Just holds it out of the way. Now, of course, I couldn't believe all the junk that was under here. I don't want to get that in my motor there, so I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. Just so it looks a little better. And yeah, that's going to have to stay there. Move it as far away then as I can. I think there's a motor mount here and a strap. Now, if you've seen my other video, I replaced this strap a while back because it was broken. I should have done is just left this side on this part of the mount because it doesn't have to come off. It'll just hang on with the mount, but I just wanted to get her done. I wasn't thinking straight, so I fiddled around here a little bit and got her off. Now, what's interesting is the reason why it broke the last time, and I wasn't really sure why, is because this motor mount's got some cracks in it. That big rubber boot, whatever you see below. And you'll see a little bit later on. I'll have a video on me changing that motor mount, and I think there's a couple other mounts that are like iffy too, so I should have just left it on. This is going to waste a whole bunch of time, but if you really have to get it off for some reason, you'll see how it's sitting on there. And hopefully I can get it off okay. And yep, so it's just one more thing I'm going to have to make a note of so that I don't lose it or forget where it goes. Some of them straps might go on that side of the engine, you know, over there somewhere, or they are on this side. Hard to say. Now, of course, I better jack it up. I'm going to need the wheel off. So here's like jacking it in this spot here. It's a pretty heavy duty spot, part of the frame. And then I got the wheel off. Now, hopefully, there's a plastic piece here that I left on earlier. Well, I got the bottom part here. I'll show you. You can see it's kind of two pieces. I took this clip off. I'm trying to hold the camera with the other hand, so I figured maybe I should put the camera down. Got that clip out, and this bottom piece, it's got a couple nuts sitting in the bottom of the frame, and then there's one under the rad support. And then I found out, well, I'm missing some. Either somebody's been in here at one time. I think the van was in an accident before we got it. But there's a clip here at the front, which I end up... I think that one was okay, but I think I broke one of these. There should be a bolt right there. I'll have to get one later. And there's a bolt back in here, so at least I've got one that I can match up to. I'll bring it to one of my local hardware stores. I'm sure it's a metric. A lot of times those places will have a little place that you can stick the bolts in different thread sizes and see what it is. The 10mm socket got this guy out pretty quick. Or at least I say it was pretty quick. And then just kind of pulled it out. There you go. Now I can get at the crank, because that's going to be the most important thing. Now I'm going to put a jack stand under here too, just because I don't want this thing sitting on a jack the whole time I have it here, because we're going to have to actually have a jack under the engine too to hold it up, because we're going to be taking the mount off on this passenger's side. So lots of fun, but well, I guess it's time to get off the accessory belt. Dirt falling from everywhere. Darn dirt. It's fairly clean under here, but whatever. There's always dirt sitting somewhere in some plastic every time we touch it. You figure how much dirt can fall out. I made a little note of the routing of this. I should have marked too which way the belt was sitting, because sometimes if you put them on backwards, they can squeak or make some kind of funny noises. So I guess when I assemble it, if it's making some funny noises, I'll know the belt's on the wrong way. Now this came off real easy. I was shocked. That was just zip. That was real time. And this is just a 20-volt impact. It's nothing major. Now here's something special I had to order. It's a special puller to get that harmonic balancer off. There's just 3 claws. They're really close together. I'll try and put a link in the description if you're interested in wondering where I got it from. It worked pretty good. A little bit of fiddling to get it working. So basically you put like a finger in there and it's going to push against the crank and it should pull that balancer off, is what I figure the way it's supposed to work. I had to fiddle with this a couple times because I found out, oh, it just was like an inch too short. So I had to get the little longer one, take it off again. I haven't used a whole lot of these pullers before, but this one had a hard time getting the fingers to latch on. So I learned a little trick here that I'm going to have to take the fingers off. The claws, I guess. These ones just kind of popped off. And work their way in behind the crank. And then stick the rest of the puller back on. So I'm just going to stick them in there this way. Because they can't bend that way very easily. There's not a whole lot of room. And then I'll just put the pins that hold them back in there. Really happy I bought this. The only problem is I didn't realize there's kind of a tool almost like this to put it back on. I thought it was hooped, but I'm not going to jump up to that right away. This is a lot of fiddling to get it on there. Stick that pin back in. Nice little puller. I think these Dodges all need this special little puller. Hopefully I don't have to do this again for another 10 years or whatever, but and then I just used my impact again. Guess a guy could have done it maybe manually, like with a ratchet. My only worry would be that maybe they would end up turning the engine. So it was working pretty hard to get this off. Working harder than it was to get that that crank bolt off, or harmonic balancer bolt. That came off. Of course, then the nut and everything, and that piece that was inside there was all too long, so I had to kind of turn it back in so I could get it out. But there we go. So if you look on this side, that's the piece that's going to push. And you see the way these little fingers are. That there's not much room to get them out. But probably easier to get them out now than it was on the engine, because they want to knock against part of the engine. Again, hopefully, if I think of it, I'll put a link in the description. Try and get them out. Even with one out, it wasn't that easy. These are just supposedly snap out. That puller probably cost me a third of what an hour of labor would have been, so save some money there, and I've got the puller. I guess I could always sell it. Even if I sold it for half price, it'd still be ahead quite a bit. I'm sure somebody would give me half of what I paid for it. So I got a little list going on here. There's E is my harmonic balancer bolt. I'll write down what the thread type is later on. It's a metric thread, because there might be some guys wondering what if a guy had a longer bolt. It's going to help us put that harmonic balancer back on later. But this was noisy. Got to come off anyway. Could buy a new one. I'm just going to lube it up. A, because I never thought of ordering one. And they won't be in stock here, so it'll probably take a day, but a penny of some grease, it'll be good for probably another 100,000 kilometers. 60,000 miles, somewhere in there. I think it was actually 120,000 kilometers. This fell off. It's the dust cap off the back. Now this I want to make sure I put back on the right way too, just in case. You can see it looks dry. Or it had invisible grease in it. So I greased it up. I'll have a video I'll probably try and put up in the right hand corner here. And I put an F on it for front, facing towards you. Or me. And this tensioner. Not much room here, man. I have to use really shallow or short sockets. I have to actually go out a couple times and buy some because, like, I don't have one this short. I usually like them longer. Just some of the stuff just barely would fit in here. Oh, and I used my little thumb ratchet. The only problem with this was too, it got stuck. It's like, what the heck? Not enough room. I was hoping it would come off. Then it's like, well, no, hopefully I can turn back the socket. I can't with the ratchet because I can't turn the little directional finger or whatever on there because that's on the back side. So anyway, I got it back in, figured out what those can do, and then manually pulled it out. This would probably be a good time too if you've been having trouble with this tensioner. It doesn't have enough tension or something like that to replace it. There's a little thumb ratchet. I'll put in a link in the description too. They've come in pretty handy. They're easy to use. You just turn that to get it to ratchet the other way. Now this, if you ever wanted to take it off, and I did another video, I'll put it up here in the description, in the top right corner. I didn't know there was a nut behind there, and when I tried taking it off, the nut fell out of place, and then I couldn't stick the bolt back in. Finally figured it out, I had to stick a little screwdriver or something in behind it. I can't remember how I did it. Now it's time to jack the engine up. I just got a piece of wood under there so I don't break my nice aluminum oil pan. Or whatever it's made out of. Aluminium? Magnesium? I don't know what it's made out of. I just started taking the bolts out that hold the timing chain cover. Most of them are exactly the same except for 3. I figured, well, since I'm under here, I'll do these ones first. That makes sense, huh? Then beside this, and you don't want to break that sensor off. Oh, here's the one that is actually a nut there. A goofy size. I don't know what the purpose of it was. It does hold it on, but that one, and there's 2 here that are actually torx. T40s. So I'll get those off, and I needed a little persuasion here. Didn't have enough oomph. I'm sure they don't recommend this, but I didn't have a wrench that was long enough. Once I got it moving, it's like, oh, maybe I should put some penetrating oil on it just to kind of clean the threads a little bit, weten them up a little bit. Maybe they will just turn a little easier. All right, I used one of my ratcheting wrenches and then got it off. I want to mark this one too because it's a weird one. Ooh, you have to follow, of course. Typical. Twice nice I can do it inside. And then these torx. What did I say? They were 40s? T40s? This is from the top. Not too much room here, but it's doable. I think it's better than you see some of these guys trying to do the Canyons and Acadias and all the GM ones. I think the easiest way to do stuff like this would be to pull it out. Now it's time to get this motor mount out. Now that's why the engine's suspended on the jack. These 2 are different sizes than the back ones. 2 in the front, and then these 3 in the back are either 16 millimeters or 5/8, I believe. I happen to have a 16 millimeter, so it's kind of a weird size. I think all the years, like, you know, it was 15, then they jumped to 17, 18, 19, but 16. And then they jump, well, actually, even 18 is kind of an odd one, but Chrysler seems to use a lot of too. Then in all the years that I've had a few tools, I've had to buy. See, these are a little longer. Get all those out. Pull that off. And look how easy this is to move. I'm thinking that is no good. If I can move it like that, how, you know, what's the engine going to be like? I'm just barely moving it. Like I say, upcoming video, I'll replace that. That must be why that ground strap broke before. Looks like these engines have a problem where they break. Now this inner cover here I'm going to try and pull back too. We took the lower one off earlier, but I tried doing it and smashed my hands in it I don't know how many times. So I finally figured, okay, just take a couple out, grab a bungee cord, pull it up out of the way. Save me some time. Save me the big bruise I'm going to have on my hand here. Now, with that piece out of the way, I didn't want to take the whole thing off either. Just got to be careful too, not hitting those things. Well, that's more. Take a look at my bruise. I mean, I don't know how many times they hit it. 20, 30 times. Kind of an old man bruise. Don't usually bruise like that. Well, I marked my crank and camshaft notches, just so I knew what was going on. You can see a white one moving around there. So, and then it's hard to see right here, but there's a little nib there, a little arrow right there. That's just over a little bit. I'm going to take something to make it white. There you go. So you know where they line up. A lot easier to see. And then I did the same on my cams. We're out a revolution. Needs to be up here. So I'm going to just have to crank. I think for every time you turn the crank, I think you have to turn the crank twice for the cams to move 100, like one full rotation. And because I got spark plugs in there, there's a lot of compression still. It's like, I don't know, maybe I should have tried to take a couple spark plugs out, but that would have been extra work. And so just line the bottom up, line the tops up. I'm going to try something new. Here, I'll show you. So that is lined up. And then it's hard to get the camera in here. That lines up there. And of course the other side does too. Now I'm going to mark the belt. I've never done that before, but somebody suggested, and I was talking to my brother-in-law after about this, and he was a big BMW mechanic, and he's worked on everything else. He says, oh yeah, you always have to mark the old belt, and then you can make those same marks on the new belt. Put them side by side, and it makes it way easier. It's like, really? I've done a couple 4-cylinders, and I didn't know that. So I learned something. So it's going to be hard to do it on the crank, but so I'm marking it on 2 spots there. And then I'll mark where the crank sits down here too. Just different angles you're looking at it sometimes. Then I'll have to take this belt tensioner off. So a couple bolts from underneath. Come underneath, see how I did it. This is it right here. I've got 2 bolts, and that's going to be a problem. So I guess I'm going to have to try and turn this CV joint, because I know for sure There's just not enough room. Whoa, wow, it scared me. Of course, for me to get it out of gear, the gear shift locks electronically. So that's how I'm going to get it into neutral. I've got the parking brake engaged so that I don't fall off of my jack stands, all that kind of stuff. Shut it off. I'm going to take my neutral or ground off again. Not that I'm doing anything under here that really requires shorting something out. Then I just took my big ratchet and I turned it somewhere to about there. It should give me just about enough room. This is slow going again. 13mm bolts they were. Once I got them loose, I used a ratcheting wrench. These are so handy. Bought them with a flex head. Some guys don't like the flex head, but I found unless you could afford two sets, like ones that weren't flex heads, you might as well just buy the flex head and put up with it. So they came out, and you can see how that loosens. It just comes out. I'm going to pull the belt off now, I guess, because everything is timed. I was all worried about this because I've never done a V6 before with the two cams. Done a double overhead cam 4-cylinder, which I would say was a lot easier because the cams are right beside each other, but this has been working not too bad. Now there's my marks. I'm going to get my new, that's the bottom, goes around the crank, and then it goes last around the two cams. If you can see my marks on the top there. Oh, that's the water pump. And I figured I better change it. This is a perfect time before I forget to get some of the antifreeze out of here. And not the easiest thing to see unless you had it up on a hoist. But it's on the driver's side. It's actually just under the antifreeze coolant bottle. So, there's my ugly mug. So if we look up, you see the coolant bottle. That's that right there. You can see the little red, pinky, yeah, right there. That's your drain for the rad. Of course, it's going to spill onto, well, I guess it's not really a frame, but it's lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. A little different than some of them, like some of the older ones. Should be able to either get a screwdriver in there if you can't turn it by hand. Make sure I put a pan under there so I don't get it all over the floor. And I was hoping it wasn't going to splash all over my arm. And it just kind of trickled out, which is okay. I thought it can drain while I'm doing something else. And then it's like, well, this almost ended up being one of those things you have to do while you're there, because in case the pan overflows, which it looked like it was probably going to do. So I got it dripping, and I figured, well, it's kind of going slow. So I loosened the rad cap. Of course, everything's nice and cool, right? So it's no big deal. And that started making her gush out. Of course, this stuff never seems to come out in a nice flow. It's got to hit the pan and then splash onto the floor. It's wherever, a guy's doing that. So you can see I've got however many liters here. Plus I got a little ice cream pail below. It took 8 liters and a bit, whatever that is in non-metric terms. It looked really clear. Pretty happy about that. But I will change it because they recommend every 5 years, and the van's 12 years old. Back to the water pump. If you didn't change it now with a timing belt, you're going to have to go through that same trouble later on. You'll have to retime it. So might as well just change it now. And you're getting a shop to do this, even if a guy was doing it on his own. It's not going to last till the next belt. So a guy's going to have to do them again, which will be retiming everything. So usually I make these little drawings of the way everything looks here and stick the bolts in, because these are a couple different sizes. Mr. Brainiac thought, oh, I'm going to save myself some time. I see the two different sizes. Till it looks like the water pump. And actually, it's got, these ones are the long bolts. And then the rest of the holes are the short bolts. So I didn't need to do that. There you go, I'll even write the word long there. So once I figured that out, it's like, oh, save myself a little bit of time. I got all the bolts out. And I thought, oh, I can just tap it with a hammer and it'll come out. It's got a different kind of gasket. It's a rubber. It's not really round. It's almost a flat. But it sits on the edge of it. I'll show you in a few moments here. So I tried tapping and prying, and I got a bigger hammer. Thought that would make it come off. And yeah, it's kind of moving, but not really. I'm not going to hurt the water pump because it's going in the trash anyway. Tried knocking it from every angle, and that didn't really help either. I don't know how much time I wasted here. And there's no room, right, to swing a hammer. And it's like, did I do all the bolts? So I figured I'm going to grab a mirror. It's like, yeah, no, I got them all out of there. So I could have made a mistake. Can you imagine that, me making a mistake? So no bolts, there's nothing holding the pump, and it's just sitting there, and it's not glued in either. So I guess I could try and pry if there was some room to pry. Now it is moving here, prying it, and the liquid's starting to come out, so made sure I had a pan underneath. And it's coming. Of course, not a whole lot of room to get a screwdriver in here to be able to pry. If the engine was out, it would be easy. So just got her starting to pop out. And I'll show you that gasket after. It's a rubber gasket, but finally got it out without damaging anything. Everything's all, you know, that light metal, aluminum. You don't want to damage that. And flipped it around this way and that way and finally got it out. Look at the gasket, it's the way it sits in there. It's a little noisy too. It wasn't leaking yet, but oh, and we should pull this out. Well, we've got a tensioner, pulley, 15mm wrench. Get it out of the way, it'll be a lot easier to put the water pump back in. Now, hopefully your kit there's a washer behind here that's kind of on. Hopefully it doesn't fall off. The new one that I got had it on there too. Now see the way this is? It's not round really, it's flat, but it's flat standing on its edge maybe. Doesn't go that way either. So I just stuck it in, snaps into place. So I don't know why it was so hard to get off, but clean everything up, stick that back on there. Put the bolts back in. I did it from underneath, and it seemed, I had enough room there. My long arms, it seemed maybe a little easier than hanging over the top of the van. Got the bolts in, the long ones go in. Looks like the parts with those, looks almost like a washer. It's not, but you see them from underneath. The short ones should go in the other holes. That one's the long one. In there. And that one's a short one. And got them all in. Let's see what I'm doing. Just tightening the water pump. And then I just snug them up. And then they want them torqued. So and this is my torque wrench here. And the torque, I believe, was 105 inch-pounds. You'll have to look if you want to verify that. I tried to do it in a crisscross kind of thing. It's not lots and lots of tightness. Now here's the old belt. And I was looking at the top to see, was it time to do it? And it's like, if you look really close, can you see the cracks? So, yeah, maybe I would have got a little more time out of it, but if it broke, that'd be it for the engine. So, worth it to do it. I'm glad I noticed that it was suggesting it. Better to do it now. Well, it worked good because, I had time to order the parts. Could have postponed it another week or two. The wife did need the van for a few days, so between me working and working on this and filming it, filming takes twice as long. I did it over 3 days, but I can't see why it couldn't be done in one day. Like 8 hours would be lots. So there's the old marks. Now, supposedly, the really good guys could do it in like 4 hours. The guys that are doing these all the time. So, see what I'll do here. I'm trying to put the belts side by side. And I'm going to mark them, and I'm going to make sure like the old belt's going to be stretched a little bit. So, I'm going to have to count teeth. Or line up teeth. So, these two are the closest ones, so they must be the one that go around the harmonic balancer or your crank. So I'm going to actually mark that tooth right there. And then as I stretch along, I want to make sure that they line up. And they almost do. I counted the teeth and made it line up. So that'll be this one right here. Now, the tooth on the belt's going to go into a groove on the crank and cams, if that makes sense. So I'll speed it up a little bit. I want to make sure, like I say, that they all lined up. It was not tricky, but I want to make sure. This is going to make it, I've never done this before, and somebody suggested it, and it's like, what a smart idea. That way I can, if I need to move a cam or something, I can. Like loosen it, but put the dots together. Yeah. So here's the new one. And again, that's for the crank side. That's the two cams. Now, guess I'm just gonna have to just do her. I was a little bit worried about this just because I haven't done it before on one of these. And it's like, oh, there was a couple other things that were way more of a pain in the butt. In fact, this belt idea, the guy that gave me this idea, oh, man, thank you so much. Saved tons of time. So, I'm going to line these up in the bottom here. That's the way I figured I'd do it. I'm going to line it up on the bottom, and then I'm going to stick some pieces of cardboard that the box that it came in with. So the crank's not going to move. So if I can make these line up, it'd be nice if I had some help to hold the belt from the top a little bit. That one goes where my thumb is. If I can get them around there. And you see the other one lines up at the top there. So that's good. And I feel that they line up in their grooves. Sorry, I'm in the way. It's hard to film this and do it at the same time and see what you're doing. And just cut a couple pieces of the box, little pieces, and then fold them in half. There's my box. Made little pieces like that. And then, if you need to fold them in 3 or something, which is getting a little thick maybe, but I just want it to hold it there so it doesn't move. So I'm going to do this belt or cam on this side first. This is the one that is against the rad the most. So not much room to get it in there. And then of course it wants to fall into a groove. It's like, oh, great. But I'm glad I did it this way too, because it was a lot easier to see where the belt really needs to go. And if I wanted to, I could have done this, turn the cam just a little bit. Oops. Of course, it's spring loaded too, right? So I just want to make the 2 dots, line up the dot on the cam wheel and the dot on the belt, and then I could tighten them up so they line up with the dot on the engine. That's what I did there. As long as the crank didn't move, when we can check that too, it's like that should be as tight as that needs to be. You often guess before, it's like, is that tight enough? But it has to be. So I'm going to just stick some paper in there too, just so it doesn't move at all. Now, of course, when we get around the crank and then we tighten everything up later, it's going to be where it needs to be. Of course, I double check everything before I start it. And you're always worried. Is this really going to line up? And then it just goes around the water pump. And there's no grooves or nothing there to line up. The water pump's not timed, so that's good. So we look underneath again and making sure everything lines up. Looks like it does, nothing's moved. And see, so that's still lined up there too. Then I did the same thing on the back side. That was tougher. But again, I was able to move the cam a little bit, which I've never been able to do in any of the other ones that I've done, because I've never marked the belt. So hopefully that, if somebody's going to try this, they're going to, it wasn't my idea. It must be something they teach all the mechanics. Let's line it up. This is what I'm doing. I don't know how many, I'm going to have to look it up, see how many hours they would have charged. And I figured I'm going to mark it somewhere else here underneath, just so if I need to do it from the bottom, how I can see if it's lining up or not. And we'll get it in there. I'm supposed to ask myself, am I having fun yet? I wouldn't say I'm having fun, but here in Manitoba, Canada, Canadian, they're going to charge us about 130 bucks an hour, I imagine, plus shop supplies. So let's say 150 bucks, and it's got to be at least 4 hours labor. I'm thinking maybe more. So I'm making myself some money. Wasn't doing anything at the time anyway. Now that's the key, I guess. If you're making yourself $60 or $70 an hour, then probably not worth doing. But if you're just at home like Uncle Mark, when he's got some time, then I'm just making money. Could I say I'm making myself $150 an hour? Guess I could always give the wife the bill, see if she'll pay it or not. Or is her money my money? How does that work? My money's her money. That's how it is. Yeah. Anyway. Plus, I was thinking too, I didn't have to pay full retail for the parts. I shopped around. I did get a decent kit. At least I thought it was a decent kit. So anyway, there's stuff lining up. Let's get back to what we're talking about here. So you can see the this one, see, it's not lining yet. Need to get that belt sitting right on the pulley. So if I just either pull on the belt a little bit, or maybe just move that cam, so I can't show you from underneath here. I guess that's the top. Well, I went and got a socket, and I got to drink something. Sometimes you just have to take a break. Rethink. I think it's going to work, though. This is my own brainiac idea, actually. course, I never did V6 before, which I was telling you guys, right? Okay, let's get back to what we're doing. Okay, so another piece of cardboard there. Try and stick it in this side. Trying to put a couple of them in there, just then the belt will stay there. Because it's not tight yet, right? So I don't want it slipping. Well, being in the wrong cog. I don't mind saying I'm getting tired. But at least, you know, person gets to see how tough this really is, or was. Everything seems to line out. Now here's the tensioner for the timing belt, the new one. It comes with the timing kit that I bought. I didn't buy just the belt, I bought the whole thing. It had the pump, it had this in there. It also had the this is a tensioner pulley, so the actual tensioner also. This just goes back in. It was before. Of course, if you use the old one, the bearings are probably, they've had it, right? So, and torque it, or try to. Of course, I had to do a little bit of playing around because I didn't exactly have the right size. I had in 3/8, not in, instead of 50 foot-pounds, not inch-pounds, foot-pounds. Get her in. There you go. Now we'll just have to get that little pressure thing that pushes against there, spring-loaded. Here's the new one. It's going to sit something like that. Then it's got like a grenade pulling pin on it. So once you pull that, I guess there is a way to push that plunger back in, but it'll probably take you a half hour or an hour very slowly. You can't just push it back in or you'll wreck it. Now, I had some trouble here too where the pin wasn't sitting exactly the right way. So I had to turn it, and of course I was scared to pull it out. So I got that in there. It's like, well, what is the issue? So it turns out the pin was just a little further in than it needs to be. Like it sticks out the bottom a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. So I tried, there you go, you can see it there. So I needed it flush. So I'm trying to be really careful. And this one, it's not going to fall out. It's not as easy to come out as I thought it was, but you'll see in a minute. Oh, it was actually writing there. I wonder if it said to make it flush. You don't notice these things all the time. Plus, I probably should have looked at the instructions. 13mm bolt. I couldn't torque it anyway if I wanted to. Not enough room. I made them pretty tight. And they are long, too. This is where it helped to have a ratcheting wrench again. They're very handy. So I have a little metric set that goes from, I don't know, 10 or 12 to 19, I think. And then if a guy needs, he could always buy a separate weird size if he needed. So it's in, and we're going to try and pull the pin. And yeah, really not easy to do. I'm pulling pretty hard and I try twisting it, pulling it. Of course, I've got a light in the way too. It's like, wow. I mean, it is hard to pull out. Maybe it's because of the pressure against stuff. There you go. And we fall over. You guys okay? I mean, it's tight. I guess I'll have to just make sure it looks okay from here. So nothing really should have moved. In theory, it can't. All the cardboard is holding the belt in place. To get all my pieces of cardboard out. Probably would have been smart to figure out how many pieces were in there ahead of time. You know, if you had 6 of them, do like a surgeon, where it's like, okay, where's all the tools? Don't want to leave something in the patient. Well, I guess if it started, you'd hear that thing running. You wouldn't want the cardboard somehow to flip on the other side of the belt. And so I found one in there. I think I kind of looked a little bit. Not the easiest thing to get out, but get this other side out too. The couple pieces I have in there. Still another one. Now, I want to turn it over, complete revolution of the cams, which is 2 revolutions of the crank. Now, the marks that are on the belt are not going to make sense in 2 revolutions. So I'm just going to have to forget about what's on the belt now. So like I say, crank turns twice to make these turn once. So I guess a guy could have turned it 4 times or something. I ended up doing it a couple times. I think I did it actually 4 rotations of the crank. And it's confusing looking at it, seeing the belt marked too. At the start I was thinking, oh, they have to line up. It's like, no, I don't know what the math would be on that. We were going to try and figure it out, but if I figure out the math, I'll put it at the end of the video. Just 2 marks there, so not this mark, because that's on the belt. We want the one that's on the camshaft. There we go, right there. So that should do it. If they all line up exactly, should be able to fire her up. So that lines up. The other side hard to see from here, but it does line up. And if we look at the crank, yeah, I wish I could zoom in, but it does line up. So should go. If it was out by a tooth, you'd know. See how it lines up. So we're good. Got all my timing bolt cover bolts there. Set the cover back on. It's just basically a reverse of how I took it apart. So I'm going to try and get it on the bottom here first, because if I get the big crank hole there lined up. Get them all in. Of course, I've got them all here, and they're all oh, don't want to forget these two, those 2 torx. Go on this side. And that big nut will go on the left, over that big bolt that's sticking out. And the ones that go on the top too, there should be actually a cover that goes behind here first. Cover the top part of this cam. That front there. There's just only the one on this side, so that goes actually underneath. Should have put it on first. Get that in there. And I have to remember that a couple of them get hidden behind some stuff. There's 3 on the top, I believe, and then 3 on the bottom. And it's got them toss up what was easier to do from the bottom, from the top. Anyway, getting those on, oh, I better do that. Big nut on there. I torqued them all. Now these, they are, I'm trying to think now what I torqued them to. according to my paperwork, it's 105 inch-pounds, I guess, was those that cover. You'll see there's 2 bolts on top. I know I'm showing you something else. Let's talk about this first. This tensioner only goes on one way. It's got kind of a dowel there that'll help you position it. And then you can put the bolt in. Back to the timing cover, there's 2 bolts on the top there that have, it's like a hook if you need to lift the engine out. But back to this tensioner. Lots of fun trying to get tools short enough. There's that bolt. I called it F and I had it written down. As the accessory belt stationary pulley. And it looks like 13 millimeters. This is the one that I lubed up. And it's got some grease in there, so it doesn't spin as nice if it was completely dry, but it'll be happier having grease in there. And it'll be quiet. Get the power steering pump back on. And it goes through the pump and then through a mount first and then into the pump. See how this works? Lining it up was a little bit of a pain. It's one of the things I thought would have been easier to do. Probably took a lot longer than putting a timing belt on. Well, maybe not exactly, but... And another thumb wrench. Different sizes, something I think it's a 1/2 inch. I got a set. There were 1/2, 3/8, and a 1/4. I've used the 3/8 lots. The 1/2, not so much. Then torqued her down. I got to torque it. It's 17 foot-pounds, which my foot-pounds won't do that low. So I did 204 inch-pounds, or basically what the maximum was that little inch-pound wrench could do. Then I just zing this bolt back off. Now, it would be nice to have this bolt. It's not long enough, actually, to put this pulley back on. I didn't know that. I guess there's a kit you can get. So I thought I was being smart. I got an extra nut for it and a washer, and I thought I will, thread it in as far as I can thread the bolt in and then stop and then turn the nut, which will pull the whole thing in. Yeah, except it's not long enough. So I tried getting a bolt, went to a bunch of different places, and that's not going to happen. I couldn't get one long enough. The thread is, take a look here. It's an M12 by 1.75. So if you could get a bolt however long you want, longer than this one that was an M12 bolt times 1.75 thread, that would work. And it will not go on. I tried pushing it, so what am I going to do? I'm kind of hooped. I did go to a couple of shops here to see if I could get this bolt longer. No one had it. And threaded rod wasn't in the metric thread size. So that's not going to work. I didn't want to wreck my crank threads. So, I really thought this was going to work. Not really. So I did something I don't suggest. After trying a few times. Well, here, let's try one more time. Then I thought, okay, let's just put the bolt in. It's like, no. It's just not far enough. Thought if it was just in enough, if you could get like 4 or 5 threads going, then I could just turn it and it would pull it in. So this is not the way to do it. I hope this doesn't do any kind of long-term damage, but I don't think the crank's really going anywhere anyway. I whacked it there a few times. Still hardly enough threads that I want to turn. So I tried whacking it on a little bit more. And it's not like it wants to go on there very easily. Once I got enough on there, I tried torquing her down as far as it would go. Then I undid it and redid it again. It should be to 70 foot-pounds. Like I say, get a long bolt and do it properly, is what I would have done if I was suggesting it. And this is how the belt works on this 4-liter. If you ever need to take your belt off for any reason, including this reason, that could thread a couple different ways, I guess. It only sits one way, of course, but what a person wants to start on or not, make sure it goes in all the right, in the grooves. Sometimes it doesn't sit properly on a pulley. It might be off a little bit, and then you can either chew the belt up. I don't know what the belt's worth, but... And 15 millimeter wrench for the tensioner. I tried it from underneath here after having the top done, and then I kind of looked over everything to make sure that the belt's sitting where it needs to be. So many times I've done this and the belt's just on the edge of a pulley or something, and then it's just barely enough room to tighten it too. If it's a brand new belt that hasn't stretched, this belt isn't that old, so. But it looks like it's on, and we're on the home stretch, pretty much. And here's that engine hoist lift mount, I don't know what it's called. That goes to the last two top bolt holes that have nothing in them for your timing belt cover. 13 millimeter, not sure what the spec. So I did it off camera anyway. And then the top of the mount goes on. Of course, got the two nuts at the front, and that should not move like that, man. Wish I would have known. Oh well. There's the motor mount bolts and nuts. So the nuts are on the front here. Bolts go on the back. And of course, it's supposed to be torqued. The little nuts, 180 inch-pounds. It's the front ones here, the two. And then the back ones, of course, are bigger. They're 40 foot-pounds. Now put your ground strap back on. That should have not been taken off, but this side goes onto the chassis side of the mount. And stick it on there. Should be good. Don't forget it, though. And put the air box back in, filter box. That was kind of fiddly to put back in too. It's getting annoyed by this time. You know, you want to start it up, see what it's like. Well, I guess you could start it up like this, but... And it fought me the whole way. And then the power steering reservoir. There's a nut that goes on there. Of course, I had that written down too. It's a 13 millimeter. I just made it snug off camera. It was one of the first things I took off. Then put the filter back in. It's a good time to change it if yours is dirty. And put the top of it on. Make sure there's no junk or bugs or other stuff in there. Snap her all in there. I guess it moves around a little bit in case the motor moves it around a little bit. You know, if everything was bolted down solidly, that might be an issue. Things have to flex a little bit. Now I'll plug this sensor back in. Clicks in and that little red thing goes inside. There it goes, and then it'll hold it on there. Do my flat screwdriver hose clamp. And then this hose, starting to look like it did before. There's also that wire that I broke that little clip off of. Fixed that off camera. That's got to go back together too. Just a couple of those little pop, whatever those tang things are called. Tried getting them at some of the parts stores there, and it looks like, nah, it's a Chrysler or a body shop thing. They had everything but the ones that I needed, so they suggested go see one of those two places. And this one, remember, it's got a little bolt plus the one that I'm missing. So I put the one in the back first. Snugged it up. I don't know, I'm sure there is a torque spec, but it's not going to be that worrisome. And this reminds me, as I'm watching this again, I never did replace that other bolt that was missing. So I'll have to just write that down somewhere. And then there's another one of those pop snug things. It's late. You know what they are. And then there should be one under the frame here too, holding the front of it. I would think expect some of them are going to break. Now I can let it down because the motor's got its motor mount back in. Put my jack out. And I'm going to hook up the battery again. I'm going to start her up, see what it sounds like. Tighten up the battery so I got a good connection. I haven't put any coolant in it yet, but let's see what it sounds like. And I actually bought the coolant from the dealer. It's actual Mopar coolant, and it was like the same price as at the hardware store. Yeah, my next project should be to do a power steering flush in this thing. But the engine's actually quieter. At least you don't hear, I guess, all those bearings and all those pulleys that have been replaced. I still need to put coolant in it, mix it, get the trapped air out, but I don't have a video on that right now. So I might as well show you the kit. I got brand name. They used to be really good. I don't know what they're like now. You know, it used to all be made in USA, but this is the part number. This was for the 4-liter. If you're ordering one, double check and make sure that's the right number. But I notice here, well, for one thing, they say the water pump, made in China. Wonderful. The belt's made in the USA. Okay, good. You don't want that going. That's probably the most important part. Then all the other components could be Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, Hungary, India, Japan, Poland, South Korea, Slovakia, Turkey, USA. Oh, anyway. And then they show you in different languages just so you can read it. But really? Anyway. And it did come with this little sticker here, so then you can write down what the mileage was so you don't forget. Or if you do sell the vehicle, somebody will know when it was done. So I'm putting it's in kilometers, so I'm going to knock the miles out of there. So they're talking 120. So then 240 roughly. So it's done by me, get it? May 21st. Then I'm my father's son, so I had to put some tape on top of it. I just thought some packing tape that some of the ink doesn't rub off, which a lot of times they will, even though it was felt. And I even got a little fancy here. This is just going overboard, but yowzers. I'm hoping it'll hang on there. So then I was trying to figure where I'm going to put it. I was hoping to do it in the rad cradle here somewhere, like maybe there. But then I noticed, oh, what's this mark? Oh, that's where the hood closes on these little rubbers on both sides, exactly where it would be a good spot to have it. So I thought, well, I don't want it there because it's probably going to rub through or something. So I figured, well, the only other place would be maybe up on the hood here. So this is where I'm going to put it. Cleaned it up a little bit, and I stuck it on there. It'd be easy to see. The sticker should be safe there too. And should be easy to read, self-explanatory. Good, it's done. Well, that's going to do it for the video. Got her done. Not really sure how long it took me because I did it over 3 days. I had some work to do on my own, plus some medical stuff with the wife, and you know how that goes. So I'm sure you can do it in at least under 8 hours. If you had all the tools, I had to run out and get extra tools too. Those 16mm really short sockets, plus 16mm odd anyway. There was some 18mm stuff, I think, too, that was a little odd. Yeah, but if you knew everything you needed and had it all lined up, or you can run out to get it, your local parts store, that'll work. Anyway, hopefully you liked it. If you did, why don't give me the thumbs up? That can't hurt. You can also subscribe down in the corner. Check out my playlist for the Grand Caravan up here. There's also other playlists too. It just depends on what I'm working on. It's my own stuff because I'm not a mechanic in just a backyard. Well, I was hoping to be a mechanic at one time. Am I glad I didn't do it? Anyway, I gotta get going. You gotta get going too. Thanks for watching. Oh, check the bloopers out at the end. Bye-bye from now, from Uncle Mark. Remember to be safe. Your safety is your responsibility and should be priority number one. Also, give me the thumbs up if you like the video. Plus, please subscribe and you'll get all the notifications. It's easy. The little dog will show you how. Ring the bell. Ring the bell. $10mm. 13mm. Oh, goodness sake.
Come on, Mr. Light. That's going to be in the way. No. Whoa. Well, that was smart.